you know, we got some catching up to do about Villa anyway.
All sorts to catch up on.
Yeah, man.
Go on, what's your first thing? What are you most
Well,
intrigued
Musa
to talk about?
obviously.
Yeah.
I went to Nostok like before it was confirmed, and it was still like um, the Saudi club was still sort of neck and neck in the running for him.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what was going to happen. And phone on like Saturday or Sunday, and maybe even Monday. And yeah, so that's exciting. He seems like such a baller. To be fair, he's
Yeah,
like
he's pretty
exactly
good.
what we need. He's so fast, good dribbler.
Two for
Seems like he's
assists.
got a decent end product. Yeah, just fucking good player. So yeah,
Yeah.
pretty buzzing. Um,
Yeah, there's not much more you can say really, is there? Like, you can try and delve into how he's going to suit the way Emery plays, but he'd suit how
yeah,
almost any team plays that plays with a wide forward.
pretty much. I
He can
think
do it
one
all.
thing is maybe his versatility because he's played almost as much on the left hand side as he has on the right at Leverkusen, and he's played up top. So
Yeah,
that's one thing that makes him a bit interesting is that he's kind of flexible. It allows us to play a few different ways. It might see Bailey still play on the right and Diaby on the left. Some games, like I don't know, we'll switch up the systems, I
yeah. He
imagine,
did
but
mention
it's quite a
something
lot of
about
options.
how he played well with Bailey, and he's really impressed by Bailey, and something along those lines. So
Yeah,
it could be that they're intending to use him as like a false nine, second striker, which would be
possibly.
very interesting to see. Because
It
I
would.
think
I think realistic. I think his main spot would be the right hand side, wouldn't it? Really. Um,
probably yeah, but just because of that inverted winger type that likes to play, it'd be um, it'd be a long time since he's played up top though, because I think he only did it as a youth player, um,
right. Yeah.
playing striker. He may have played like a more central role in his senior career at some point, perhaps at Leverkusen. But I don't think he's been an out-and-out striker since his youth days. So if he did move centrally, it probably would be more of that false nine kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'd expect use him mostly on the wings because he doesn't really have the stature for what you probably want in that position anyway.
No. And well, the other thing to talk about really is the we had the friendly against Newcastle, didn't we?
Yeah,
Um,
stayed up to watch that.
and Philogene was playing like really wide, wasn't he, on the right?
Yeah,
Didn't watch it as far as I can tell. So, and I imagine Diaby's going to, you know, fit in that role perfectly. Basically, playing really high up on the pitch, really wide on the right, giving an option for the switch. Because what I was thinking is, I think I was watching a Tifo video about our transfers,
yeah,
and they were talking about Pau Torres and how it's going to change the dynamic at centre back. Um, and they mentioned how our our attacks are quite left hand side focused.
yeah,
Um, because you have Moreno as the attacking fullback, you've got Luis on the left hand side, who's the more creative midfielder, and then on the right hand side, the fullback stays back, and the winger last season it was Bailey just stays out in space. And then the value of having someone like Pau Torres, who, if you look at his FB ref, he switches the ball like several times a game, and his long passes completed is obviously really good. So it's like a perfect having someone like Diaby out wide right in loads of space because our attacks are left hand side heavy. So the opposite team defense moves onto the left hand side, and then when you've got a player like Torres who can switch the ball, it just leaves the right winger in absolutely loads.
yeah. No, that certainly does make a lot of sense. I think we kind of were showing how that can be a useful outlet for us just last season, even with Bailey and
Yeah, yeah, it
some
was still
players like
happening
that.
last season. Yeah,
Yeah, trying to push that move. It was just obviously Bailey didn't do a lot with it, and sometimes we would miss him. So if you
yeah,
really kind of streamline that connection between the centre back and the right winger, giving him that out ball when he can't play short, then
yeah,
not only are we gonna be even better at keeping possession and avoiding the press and things like that, being more sound in our own third of the pitch, we'll be able to transition even quicker, which is going to cause even more problems for other teams. So
Yeah, yeah, exciting, man. The centre backs is interesting because this Tifo video is talking about how if we take Mings out of the team, we don't have a lot of physicality, which
yeah,
is a good point.
yeah, I
Um,
think I watched the same video in terms of the centre backs, how it's
yeah,
real lack of aerial
yeah,
prowess.
it's really like to think about because Mings is really our only player with really good aerial presence. To be honest, like Konza's not brilliant in the air. Kamara's like okay because he's a bit tall. Uh,
He's shorter than Konza. I'm still
yeah,
convinced Konza's not the 6 foot that he's always billed to be. He looks taller than that to me.
I think Konza is quite tall. He's just like really he's kind of just lanky, isn't he? He's not got like
I only ever
much
see him
physicality.
reported as being like 6 foot, but I'm like, he looks at least 6'2".
No, I think he
Let's
is.
have a
Yeah,
look.
he's not that much shorter than Mings. He's just not got like the width, like the stature, the strength. And he
Yeah,
plays in a different way, doesn't he? Like he stands off his man a bit more. He relies on his positioning rather than his like physicality and aggression, which Mings does.
yeah.
So yeah, if you take Torres out, if you take Mings out of the team and replace him with Torres on the left hand side, uh, yeah, the team is like a bit fragile. Like crosses, long balls, corners, bit of an issue there. Um, so I think we might see Mings move over to right centre back.
You think
Um,
you think that's where we're going?
I don't know. I think without Mings or Carlos in the team, then we don't have enough aerial presence or aggression or physicality. So I think we either see Mings at right centre back or Carlos at right centre back. Um, and I think Mings,
Provided that Pau Torres is starting, assuming.
yeah, I do think there's a chance that Torres will like it will take a while for him to find his place in the team. To be fair, I could see his first game starting Mings Konza because it's worked. They did exactly what Emery wanted them to do last season. Um, so there's a chance that we don't play Torres immediately and we bed him in somewhere and it takes him a little while to find his place. But if we're talking about when we've eventually got a settled team, I think most likely is Mings at right centre back because I think he's such a like important figure in terms of the squad and leadership that you lose a lot if you take him out of the team. And he's got that aerial presence, that physicality that we really need. So I don't know. I think it could work because obviously he is quite left-footed, but with Torres alongside him, it takes quite a lot of the ball playing responsibility off him. So even though he would be on the wrong side on the right, he won't have as much responsibility to play the ball, and so it wouldn't necessarily matter as much. He could play in a bit more of a limited role in terms of his ball playing aspect
Yeah.
if he was on the right hand side with Torres alongside him. Um,
Do
so
you think it could be potentially a combination of two separate back fours? So in however many games they decide to make the split, you'll have Torres starting on the left, a Carlos most likely on the right to provide a bit more aerial ability compared to Konza, and then you might see Konza at that makeshift right back role, so that you're effectively playing a back three that transitions into a back four once you're in defence. Obviously, Moreno dropping back. Then potentially see a slightly different lineup where you have Mings and Konza and Cash in a more traditional back four style, but with Cash just playing a little more reserved, allowing Moreno to move up the pitch.
yeah,
Obviously, Konza's pretty much doing that too, but he'll be playing more of that dedicated right centre back role rather than a sort of reserved right back.
yeah, yeah, definitely an option. Obviously, we've got the personnel now to play like two completely different back fours that are both really solid. Um, I just feel like it doesn't happen very often, really. Especially getting in the on the back end of a season when like the stakes kind of hot up a bit. Um, I think teams tend to settle on a consistent back four. Say you're in the back end of the Premier League, you're in the quarter final of a couple of cup competitions. I don't know how often you want to change up your back four, really.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I think maybe early on in the Conference League and stuff, we'll probably see like almost two completely different starting 11s, and in the early rounds of the League Cup and stuff like that. But then once we settle on something, I can't see rotation happening as much, um, especially in the back four because it's sort of quite valuable to keep it same.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, he is a very versatile manager, isn't he, Emery? Like he changes systems midway through game. Week after week, different systems, different personnel. So I don't know. I
Well,
really don't know what to
are
do.
you of the opinion of that
What
you
would do?
can't switch centre back pairings within a tactical formation? Like you would rather keep, say, Konza and Mings together, or Konza and Carlos together, whatever it's going to be, long term throughout the season, than have others switch in, or are you of the more of the opinion that once they're all under Emery's wing and they all understand their jobs, you could mix and match any of the two depending on what team you play?
Um, I think they're probably all good enough players to mix and match quite effectively. Um, but I do think I don't know. I think it's somewhere in between. I think there's value in having an established partnership. When two players know each other, they know their roles, they become accustomed to the ways that each other position themselves and things like this. I
Yeah,
think there's value in that. So I think, especially at the back end of a season, I think there's definitely value in consistency. Um, but I do think they're all flexible enough to play different roles. And we've got two centre backs, Carlos and Mings, who are a bit more physical, more aggressive, and then there's Torres and Konsa, who are more kind of sweeper, stay back, rely on positioning more than tackling ability necessarily. You've got Mings and Torres, who are obviously left-footed, both fairly good on the ball. Konsa, who's not as good on the ball, but right-footed, a bit more limited. Like, there's a lot of variety. There definitely is enough flexibility to mix and match, but I don't know. I do think there's value in the uh, in the partnerships.
yeah. So you'd stick with a Mings Konza potentially and a Torres Carlos and not switch those, or are you saying you would stick with having one player to complement the other in a pairing? Because you know, while Mings and Konza have played a lot together, Konza being a little bit more of the ball carrier, whereas Mings being more of a ball playing centre back, at least in this system, and better in the air, bit more of a tackle monster, right? Would we not potentially just see another player like Carlos come in to play that role that Konza plays next to Mings, so Mings doesn't have to necessarily change anything he's going to do as long as Carlos is able to replicate exactly what Konza gets, exactly what they get from Konza in a game, making that transition smoother? Or would you just go, you know what, that's a centre back partnership, that's a centre back partnership. If I need Mings' height more, I'll play them. If I need Torres' ball playing ability more, I'll play them.
I don't know. I think the flexible option is maybe the better one. I think
Yeah,
there's certain teams where you need physicality, certain teams where you don't, certain teams where you rely on the playing ability a bit more. There might be certain teams where the right hand side is more dangerous for them, and you need like physicality on the right, so you play Carlos. So I think the flexible option is a better one. It's good that we've got flexibility.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I don't know. I think as long as if Mings can play on the right, I think that is a perfect partnership. I think the physicality of Mings paired with the ball playing ability of Torres, the aggression of Mings paired with Torres's tendency to play a bit deeper and rely on positioning. I think that can be a really good partnership that can complement each other really well. That we can rely on against most teams in most situations.
Yeah.
Um, if Mings can play on the right, that's the only thing I think.
Yeah,
But
that's
also, I
my
mean,
suspicion that he will struggle
Carlos
with that.
Carlos could play there. Like it kind of to me it kind of hinges on what level Carlos is at. He's had his injury. We've never seen him. We don't actually like know how good he is. Especially after like he's 30 years old off the back of a big injury. You don't know how a player's going to recover. In theory, if he is at the same level as he was when we signed him, he's the physical kind of player that Mings is, but he's also right-footed. So in theory, Torres and Carlos is again a perfect partnership, and then you've got Mings and Konza as either as backups, or one of them can play right back if you're playing like more of a back three in possession, or Mings could even play left back, or if you need more height and physicality, you put Mings at left centre back instead of Torres. Like Torres and Carlos could be a really good starting partnership, and then you've got the flexibility to change things up in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
But we don't really know what level Carlos is at, and you know it feels a bit unfair to drop Mings and Konza given how well they played last season, how much of a big part they've had in us staying in the league, consolidating our position in the league, and then getting like European position. Like it feels really mean to just suddenly drop them. I mean, obviously, like it's football and it's
Yeah.
brutal, but
Yeah. That's the thing. It is football. It is about money and it is brutal. And
yeah,
at the end of the day, Unai's already shown, and NSWE have already shown that they're willing to cut people off if they don't think they're right for the project, and if they don't think they're going to help them progress the project to the next stage, which at this point is either Europa League, Champions League, or maintaining at least our European spot, because we technically overperformed in order to achieve the European spot. So to maintain it is technically to progress in some.
yeah,
It depends on the way you perceive it, but I I think we might maybe look at these players a little bit too much through rose tinted glasses at times. Like Mings, yes, love him, love the character, love the man, love the way he looks. uh, but he was a great captain, and I'm sure he will be again. But when the ball's at his feet, you can't help but be a little bit anxious
yeah,
sometimes. And if that's the way he's going to make you feel as a fan, I certainly feel like Unai will feel that way at points. So I highly doubt that he'll try to turn Mings into a right-sided player. Partly because I just don't know if it will work, and partly because I think he'll just have a bit of PTSD from a couple of moments last season, and he'll go, "I'm not putting Mings on the right if it even if it costs me, one more of those moments." Um, and it's that kind of brutal ruthlessness that we've mentioned that will see him look at Mings' flaws and might see him get less game time and eventually phase him out. But you know, do I want that to happen? Do I want Mings to be shit? No, obviously not. I want Mings to be as good as, if not better than, Pau Torres and Diego Carlos, and I want him to play in preferably a back three with those and Konza. But then I also want to have the best midfield in the league and the best attack in the league and all this and that. So I
yeah.
understand
It's
this all
tricky, isn't
comes
it?
at a cost, whether that's an emotional or financial one. Um, so you know, even if he does get dropped and it is unfair, at the end of the day, it's for the sort of greater goal of the club, which I also have a sort of participating uh, investment in. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's what
It's
it
really
is.
tricky. Um, yeah. No, I mean, there's also in terms of managing a squad, there's obviously a lot of value in these players who've been at the club a long time.
Yeah,
So Mings is probably the kind of player who you want to keep happy because he's such an important figure. And if you start pissing off your most important players, then you start pissing off everybody. Um, So it is a fine balance between signing new, better players and keeping the sort of senior players happy.
Yeah,
But I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for us to do that because we are in a European competition. Um, so there's more games.
yeah, and
Um,
it's not even like we're completely gutting the squad or anything like that. You know,
no,
there's still, well, obviously Mings, Konza, Emmy is now more of a long term player at the club. Um, you know, I feel like his roots are properly spread, whatever the word is. Um, and you know, you've got Cash, who's been here a few years now. McGinn even longer.
yeah, the squad's
Uh,
pretty settled, really, isn't it? I
yeah,
mean, even this transfer window, we talked about
Dougie as
how
well.
exciting the moves we're making. Like, we haven't actually signed that many players, you know.
Yeah,
We've just
three
signed.
first team players I think is pretty average
Yeah,
for
yeah,
a
yeah,
transfer window. If
yeah.
we
It's
bring
not
in
it's not an
five or
overhaul or
six
anything.
that are brought in specifically to improve the first team, not to add depth, but specifically to improve, then that borders on okay. We might be having a bit of a hot summer here, but
Yeah.
with Tielemans, even though he's going to have high wages and things, I don't necessarily think he's come in to start.
No, I think that's kind of like a not it's not even a depth signing really. I feel like it's hard to call it a depth signing because he is too good to be a, when you think of
It's an
depth players, you
opportunity
think of players
signing.
that,
It's a we have this
yeah,
player. We don't know exactly how we're going to use him.
yeah.
Unai Emery's probably got his ideas, of course, but
Yeah,
he was too good an opportunity to turn down that
pretty much.
he's been brought in.
Yeah, he's also very, very versatile. Like you can't really go wrong signing a midfielder who's that versatile because probably his best position is exactly where what Louise's position is. So we've got a tailor-made player to go into Louise's position if Louise gets injured, if he needs a rest in a cup game, whatever.
Yeah.
Tielemans can go there, no problems. But then he can also probably play the Kamara role. He wouldn't be like
I
brilliant,
wouldn't
but
put
he'd
him in
be
the
all right.
Kamara. Yeah. maybe
I mean,
maybe
no, I wouldn't.
against Luton.
Yeah, but like in theory, he can play there.
Yeah.
He could probably play. He could definitely play in the McGinn role on the right. Like kind of inverted wide midfielder. He could play Ramsey's role on the left, same kind of thing, and he could play behind the striker. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's like it's hard to call him a depth signing because he's such a good player, but it also, I mean, it kind of is really. It kind of was just an opportunist kind of. We'll take him. He can play in a load of
Yeah, because
positions.
I remember when the announcement was actually made, we were being linked with a lot of other players, and then it was a very quick. Oh, Tielemans could be an idea. Oh, we've got him. Kind of
Yeah,
thing. It wasn't
yeah,
like we weren't being
yeah.
linked
Didn't
with
seem
him
like
for
a long-term
months.
plan kind of thing.
Yeah, it just came up, sort of cropped up out of nowhere, and sometimes
Yeah.
we do that with our transfers, but I'd still say it wasn't something that was a long
No,
term
I reckon
plan.
we were probably looking at midfielders, like because the thing with kind of taking a step forward as a club is you've got to improve your first team, obviously, and then I think maybe it's a bit underestimated the importance of having a good bench,
Yeah,
especially when you're in European competition. Um, difference between a team that can sustain a challenge for like top six years and years in a row, and a team that might get top six once and then drop off the next year is basically injuries to like two really important players. Um, and taking that step forward to a team that can consistently challenge for those places is having a bench and a squad of like 25 players who are all good enough to come in if needed. Um, so I reckon we were looking at a midfielder
yeah,
definitely,
probably
just
more. I
just for
saw links
having.
with Genduzi, Zubimendi,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, we
can't
were we
remember
were
anyone
obviously
else,
looking
but
for a player who
yeah,
could come
definitely
in,
Tielemans.
say Luis got injured or whatever. We were definitely looking for a like really quality player, but yeah, not necessarily Tielemans. I think that was an opportunity.
Oh yeah, no,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, but what do you reckon about Philogene chances?
Well, I mean, if this was 2, 3 years ago, or at the start of the season, and Philogene putting in these kind of performances, not that he hasn't done something similar before, But these kind of performances where he stands out in the team,
Mm.
um,
Because he has stood out, hasn't he? Like the two friendlies, he's been one of the better players for sure. Like
yeah,
pretty obviously.
um, yeah. When he's playing at this level, standing out. 2-3 years ago, I said new Jacob Ramsey, as in the next prospect, getting into the side and actually getting minutes
Yeah,
and becoming a one of our own sort of thing. But now with Diaby and I mean, Bailey and Traore are still on the books. Both Ramseys are now on the books. Don't know if he's getting loaned out. The younger Ramsey, Wendy is still there. Now we've got more players to fill in those two striker spots.
mm.
I don't know where the space is for him, even though I'd like to see him get minutes. He can obviously play like backup winger. He could obviously get minutes if players are injured. He could obviously get minutes in those early stages of the Conference League. But just whether he will be afforded that, I don't know, because unless we sell Traore, he's looking to fight through three experienced professionals to get a start.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's pretty clear from last season that Emery, especially when in important games, he's not willing to trust young players when the stakes are really high.
Yeah.
Like Duran barely got any game time.
Mm.
And there was always youth players on the bench, but they never got any game time. So unless Emery really trusts him, it is difficult to see where his game time is going to come.
Yeah. Well, I think
Um,
to an extent we have to consider and put a little asterisk next to last season and kind of give it the context that it deserves. He wasn't there from the start of the season. He came into an absolute shit show that was 1 point
yeah,
off the bottom.
yeah,
Um, Despite whether the squad deserved to be there off merit of previous seasons or not or whatever, it was there. That was the position we were in, and it wasn't until very late on that we actually saw European places as a genuine, real possibility. And even that late on, we never had that certainty of it. You know how kind of like Newcastle and Man United had. They knew they were going to be there or thereabouts, even if they dropped a couple of points here and there because of the gap they
yeah,
had. Because the season had gone the way it had. They kept up a relatively high level of form throughout the season. There wasn't too much concern that they were going to suddenly drop off, uh, lose all their games. Liverpool, as best they tried, were suddenly going to become the best team in the league and win all their games. They nearly did. But there's not much of an expectation that was going to happen. Whereas we were in that sort of ninth to seventh kind of range, even as high as fifth at one point. But we always knew there were teams ahead of us that had games in hand, teams behind us that had
yeah,
games in hand. So many teams within a point or 2 points of us. Even Brentford, up until the last couple games of the season, might have finished above us. So every single one of those games, like was said 8 or 9 games prior to the actual final game of the season, was like a cup final, because each one of those mattered for us to actually get European football. It wasn't just like, okay, we probably need to win like 6 of these games. Maybe we can
no,
lose
yeah,
3 and no one will catch us, or we'll be at least fourth or something like that. It was, we
yeah,
need to win absolutely every one of these to give ourselves any chance of finishing even in a Conference League spot. So,
yeah,
given that context, I think you can make some more allowances for not trusting youth players and really sticking to that starting 11. Obviously, things next season, well, this season, are going to be different. How different? Don't know. Because if somehow we do start off shit, Unai's going to shit himself. He's going to be like, this wasn't in the plan. What's going on? I win. What are you doing? And then he's not going to know. That's the one situation where I can see Unai Emery not knowing what to do, where his team's playing shit, and it's because, well, it might not be because of him, but he's done all he can, and it's still playing like shit. then
mm.
then I
I
think
don't
he'll
know what
just
if that happens. Like, I think we just have to give up on Aston Villa and fully accept that it's actually a
yeah,
cursed club.
just fold the club at that point. If
Yeah,
Unai
just
Emery
give
can't get this club into winning
a win.
ways, with
No,
especially with the new signings we're making, then just
yeah,
just
give
give
up.
up.
Yeah,
Give it
yeah,
all to another claret and blue side and just leave. But not West Ham. Fuck West Ham. So
Yeah. No. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is hard to know. I mean, if you look at Villarreal, he was very good with youth. Actually, he definitely sees the value in youth players. He's definitely willing to trust him if you think he's good enough. He sees the value in the connection that like young players have with fans. Um, but yeah, Philogene a weird one because he's 21, so he's not like super young.
yeah,
He's probably just about at the age where he either makes it into the first team or he leaves permanently. Really, like maybe one more loan in him,
yeah. Wingers
maybe.
usually show their true value by their early 20s.
Yeah.
Because I think
So
for a winger, your prime generally tends to be in that sort of 23 to 27 zone rather than that sort of 26 to 30 zone, just because of the physical
yeah,
aspects
definitely. Yeah,
required to be at the top level as a winger these days.
yeah. So yeah, if he's
If he's yeah,
he,
if
he yeah
he's on for it soon,
yeah.
basically.
But it's just interesting, isn't it? Because he's one of those out of all our young players, like Archer, obviously always in the conversation. Aaron Ramsey, same. Robinham probably after them is like the next most exciting thing, and then Philogene has always been in the conversation because I remember him getting a couple first team appearances under Dean Smith, just as substitute appearances, and so like that, and that was like 2 or 3 years ago, and he was like, I remember Smith doing an interview saying that he's like got really good technique, blah blah blah, and he seemed like at that time he was one of the more exciting ones. Then he's gone on a couple loan spells, not done amazingly, but he was playing at teams that were struggling in the championship anyway, so it's hard to judge.
Yeah,
Because Archer and Ramsey and Robinham have done so well and stood out so much, he's kind of fallen back a little bit and become a little bit forgotten about. And I assumed honestly that he was one of them who wasn't quite going to cut it, and he'd probably be like a championship or low level Premier League player, and we'd sell him on. But it's just interesting that he's kind of out of nowhere been getting loads of game time in pre-season and impressing a lot as well.
yeah. I
Um,
think part of the kind of flying under the radar of it could be just to do with the fact that he was at Cardiff last year. They weren't a great team in the
yeah, that's the
championship.
thing. No, they were,
They
they were crap.
probably didn't play great flowing football, which probably didn't afford him a lot of space and opportunities in his
Yeah, I mean it's
position.
especially difficult as a winger, isn't it? You know, if you're in a struggling team as a winger, it's really you're not in the kind of position where you can pick the team up, and if you're so much of what people judge you off is like assists and goals. But unless you're Mbappe or you're Lionel Messi, it's hard to shine in a shit team if you're a winger, really.
Yeah,
So it
if
is
we
really hard to
liken
judge.
this to any other sort of vertical, you're basically this big company, right? Huge company, one of the biggest in your country, and you've got a young up and coming employee, and you've just basically said, hey, there's that really shit company just down the road, or well, they're not a really shit company, they're relatively shit company just down the road. They're going downhill massively. We're just gonna pop you in charge there for like 6 months, so you can just like figure it out. By the way, you won't have any power, and you'll have to do what you're told. But if you can just
Yeah,
fix
pretty
it,
much.
like
Yeah,
go do that. So I
yeah.
think they're well aware that what happens in the championship stays in the championship, and if Philogene can produce for Unai Emery in this side, whether it's pre-season or not, like if
Mm.
he keeps doing what he's doing right now for the rest of pre-season, I think he stays or at least gets sold for a decent fee.
Absolutely. I think being a fucking smart guy and not Steven Gerrard, Unai Emery is the kind of manager who would give if he's going to give Philogene a load of game time in preseason. He's obviously got some kind of plan for him, right? If he continues to play in the next few preseason games, you would have to assume that he's going to play some kind of role because he's not a fucking idiot. Like he's not Gerrard where he plays the young players in preseason and then fucks them off. Um,
Mm.
so
I
yeah,
think it
I
could
saw someone
be.
say that his physical side had improved a little bit because that is always a factor with young players is that sometimes
Yeah,
they don't physically develop until like 21, 22.
I
I saw
love
someone say
I
that
love
his
watching
physical.
how he just stands up a fullback. Sorry to interrupt. I just love how he like stands up a fullback and just goes for it and just like it doesn't. You know how Bailey does it, but he doesn't have the confidence when he does it. and it
Yeah, he
always ends
did
up
this a little bit,
fumbling it.
didn't he?
Whereas he just
Yeah,
goes, I know exactly what I'm capable of. I don't care who you are. I'm going to try it on you, and
yeah,
just just caused havoc. You know.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the. I mean, like you sent me a message saying that you thought Emery might like Philogene, and I was saying that he had the exact same type of player in Chukwueze at Villarreal, who was like young player, fast winger, played on that right hand side. Similar player to Diaby, similar player to Bailey. Emery obviously loves a player on that right hand side who just takes the man on and is brave and is fast. I feel like he seems to see a little bit of in Philogene Bidace. Like
Yeah, because
he
he's getting
clearly,
minutes over Bailey.
yeah, and he's impressing.
I'd give him
Um,
minutes over Bailey in the Premier League at this point. To be fair,
yeah, to be honest,
there were points
I mean,
last season where
you
we
know,
were willing to just put anyone on the right wing over Bailey
yeah,
because he had his
yeah.
games.
I mean, McGinn kind of nailed down that spot, didn't he? Like
Yeah,
it was a bit of a different role, but it is a bit worrying when you're Leon Bailey and you're seeing like John McGinn's fat ass getting a team ahead of you on the right wing. You're like, what the fuck's going on here?
well, if John
That's
does
so
what
it's not
John
right there.
does, then his fat ass gets in the way of anyone.
But that's an interesting thing about the Newcastle game is that McGinn played like number 10 basically, didn't he?
Oh God, no, I think he was wide right still because I remember him in a couple of highlights.
I thought Philogene played there.
Well, in terms of he was like deeper. I don't know what the
Yeah,
exact. It was hard to come up with an exact formation. Like they just put a team of 11
yeah,
out and you just kind of saw them play on the pitch. It wasn't like it
yeah,
normally is where we kind of have an estimated lineup and then it's all familiar players and the game's played in a very methodical, meticulous way where you can see what each player's doing. It was a bit more frantic and things like that. But I'm pretty sure he played more to that right hand side, and Philogene
yeah.
was just further up the pitch than him. Um, but yeah,
But yeah, well, yeah. I mean, what I saw was like it was a bit of analysis. I don't know if it was an article or whatever, but basically that because Philogene played really really wide, really high up, McGinn had a quite a lot of space in the sort of I guess like right half space kind of thing
yeah,
between the wing
I think that's what
and the
you call
centre.
it. Yeah, like he might have started deeper, but once he got the ball, him and Buendia were both very capable of sort of. Oh, I don't know if you've got the pitch here like this, Buendia, Bailey, just over the halfway line. They're very good at doing
Yeah,
this without
yeah,
making a run necessarily. Just sort of
mhm,
drifting inside into space because of what was left when Philogene and Watkins pushed up.
yeah, yeah. That's that. Yeah, that's basically it. Is that wide right player creates a lot of space behind not behind Watkins, but like where Watkins kind of moves
Yeah,
into the left channel. There's a load of space there in the middle. Um, but that I feel like we've been waiting to see McGinn in that role a little bit, because he had like a couple of kind of years where he was centre mid. I feel like centre mid's not really his position. Um,
yeah.
he's
In
he's sort of
with the right
he's quite a weird
instructions, he could be.
player, isn't he?
I think
Yeah,
the problem with putting him in midfield is you tend to profile him. You either go, okay, I want you to play as an 8 or a 6 or a 10.
yeah,
He doesn't. He plays as John McGinn,
yeah,
and you just
yeah,
kind of have to find
yeah.
somewhere to put him and let him play as John McGinn.
Uh, yeah,
You know,
pretty much. Yeah,
you can't tell
yeah.
him, I
I
want you
feel
to
like
be the next Tielemans because he's just gonna go and shove his ass in someone.
yeah, that's
You
the
know.
thing. It's like no matter what you tell him to do, he just sticks his ass about. It doesn't matter. Say like you're the long passes guy, or like
Yeah.
you're the transition guy. He's like, nah, I'm going to stick my ass into everyone. Um, but I think that works best when he's like in a like kind of a pressing, quite offensive, pressing high up the pitch, picking the ball up high up the pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
still
But
given that
to see him
opportunity
in
to
that
be a bit of a
role,
dog in the midfield and
yeah, it was nice to see him there because
people up.
that's what he's best at, and he's better high up the pitch, I think.
Mm.
So that'll be exciting going forward. Um, it's interesting what his role will be actually in the season because if we're signing, like last season he played right mid quite a lot. he's not going to go there anymore because we've signed Diaby and then we've got Bailey and Buendia and other players that can play there.
Yeah.
He's probably not going to go centre mid because on the right side of centre mid you've got Kamara, who's the more defensive player, and McGinn's not going to
Well,
play there, and you're not moving to Louise anywhere.
he could play in that right-sided midfield spot where he drifts in still, because the thing is, unless we literally play two strikers, as in Archer and Duran, alongside a Watkins, that second spot next to Watkins is kind of just an inside forward anyway. It's an extremely high winger who cuts in. So,
Yeah,
it's still that sort of 4-2-2-2. That's probably too many twos. But 4-2-2-2.
that's right.
4-2-2-2. It's
Yeah, that's right.
probably the right amount of twos, and he's going to play somewhere between the first two and the last two.
Yeah,
In the middle.
yeah. Well, that's what happens sometimes. So sometimes our system last season was like basically always have Louise and Kamara or equivalent Dendonka, whoever.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you'd have Ramsey and McGinn, and they play as the kind of next two in the middle, but sort of a bit wider. And then you would have Watkins and probably Bailey, and then Bailey would spread onto the right hand side. Watkins would kind of move into the left channel a little bit. Ramsey would tuck in. McGinn would tuck in. But then sometimes you would have Bailey and Buendia, so you'd have like Luis Kamara, Bailey on the right side of midfield, Ramsey on the left side of midfield, Watkins up top, and Bailey and Buendia kind of behind. But Buendia would like move into those half spaces a little more. So it is like McGinn could still play right midfield, I suppose, if Diaby played off Watkins, but moved into that right channel and left the space there.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't know. It's interesting because he's currently the captain of the club. Again, it's like another situation of we're improving the team. You've got these players who are like emotionally quite important to the squad. They're kind of leadership roles. They've been there for ages. The fans love them. They're important in a kind of emotional sense, but we're improving the positions that they're in, and so like you can't really just completely shove them out. But also you've got to acknowledge that their place is getting a little bit, their position's getting changed a little bit in the squad.
Yeah.
Um,
Here's
it's
an
an
interesting
interesting one.
question for you. Out of the players to sort of predate the Grealish sale that we still have,
Mm-hmm.
who do you think would progress furthest with the squad? So you're talking, your Watkins, your Cash, Dougie Louise.
I think there's a few actually. I think Watkins definitely. I mean, it depends how far in terms of progression you're talking about. Like if you're talking like
in terms of the ceiling of where the team will go and how many years in the future that player will still be playing for the team, assuming we keep just getting better and better.
I think if we become a team that is consistently trying to break into top four, it's consistently in the battle for like third, fourth, fifth, sixth, say. I think Watkins, Louise, Ramsey. I mean, it's hard. Like, do you mean first team?
Yeah,
Do you mean like
first team.
keep their
That's it.
spot?
Keep their spot, or still be a regular starting player. Like for me,
Yeah, I
my
think.
top choice would be Dougie. I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Louise. I think if I was going to pick 100% Louise.
I think the most
Like,
interesting to see would be if McGinn's still there. I'd love to see how McGinn fits into a Champions League final side, for example.
oh man,
Imagine he
that would
just
be brilliant.
comes on, shoves his ass into everyone, and just
Yeah,
scores a
he's the
screamer.
kind of player who I feel like he could do it. Like he's got such a unique skill set. I feel like if you could find a place for him, I would
Honestly,
love to see him play in a
McGinn,
fucking Champions League final.
if Real Madrid need, some cheap midfield backup, if they need to sell off maybe a Chouameni or a Valverde so they can afford Mbappe, and they need a
Yeah,
cheap midfield signing,
yeah, get
I'm
him
happy
in.
for them to come get John McGinn because I would love to see him in the Champions League.
Yeah, man. Yeah, same. Yeah, no, I think. I think yeah, if we were like consistently challenging top four, Dougie 100%. Watkins definitely capable, but then if we move to the next level, I think like if you're talking, I think there's a bit of a separation between third, fourth, fifth, and top two, considering how good City, Liverpool are. Maybe Arsenal. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think
Top
that
two is like a
I don't
bit of
have
another.
I don't have his FB ref up or anything like that, but instinct would my instinct sorry would be that Watkins isn't clinical enough and doesn't take enough shots. So that being that he
Yeah,
doesn't get in enough positions. If you notice when you watch a top side, every time they go into a position where attacking scenario could be created, the striker's getting in position, making a run, or getting in the right
yeah,
place to get on the end of it and getting more shots. Whereas Watkins doesn't necessarily always do that. Sometimes he
yeah,
does seem a little bit lost. But obviously, Unai's improved that a lot by telling him to just prioritise being a striker, being between the centre backs, making runs in behind, and things like that. So yeah, it's certainly not a huge concern for us and where we are right now. But
no,
if you wanted to be a
absolutely.
top
He's
Champions
definitely
League
good enough now,
side
but yeah,
or something like that, I do think he would sort of drop to the bench.
yeah, yeah. I think, yeah. Third, fourth, Watkins would probably just about be all right with the right players around him. Like pushing on to like team that's challenging for the Champions League or the Premier League. I think Watkins not quite. Dougie, I could still see playing in a team challenging for the league. Honestly, he's only
Yeah,
25. I
I
think
think
he's
he'd be
got
playing
it in him.
for the league right now. To be honest, he could have
He
gone into
probably
that
could. Yeah,
Arsenal side and improved it. If you ask me, uh,
yeah, probably.
I see him
He
as
would.
better than
He
Guimaraes. I've
could
said
get
this
into
before,
Liverpool.
but
Yeah, no. Yeah, Dougie definitely. If I was to pick one player, I think Ramsey. It's hard to know with Ramsey because he's young. Don't know what his ceiling is really, but I think he's got potential in him to be at least in like a title winning squad. Maybe not a starting player.
mm,
It's definitely good enough for. Oh, I mean, potentially good enough for top four starting player. Again, like young, hard to know what his trajectory is,
yeah,
but seems to have it in him for a top four player. Maybe
he's got a
title winning.
bit of a
Don't know.
Bellingham vibe about him. Just ignoring where he's from and his stature and all that. Just thinking about the kind of midfielder he is, being sort of capable to play number six and number eight because he is defensive, but you'd much rather have him as a number 10 because he is pretty good on the ball. He's a great ball
Yeah,
carrier, got a great eye for goal. Both, can use 2 feet. So he is just kind of that weird maverick midfielder. It's like if he is to play at that level, he essentially just has to keep doing what he's doing because if he contributed as much as he did last season in a bigger team, their wingers and strikers are expected to contribute more in terms of goals and assists anyway.
yeah,
So if you're one of your midfielders, like a Jacob Ramsey at the age of 21, 22, is contributing about 10 goals and assists through the season, even if you're a league chasing side, I think you still are pretty happy with that.
yeah,
But then again, you know, teams do tend to change a little bit stylistically, um, and maybe that doesn't sit well for him. But I could
yeah.
see him getting at least at the top end of his career Champions League football.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think he's definitely capable of that. I think the only thing with him is maybe like his versatility. Um, he's
Don't
he's
say
like
he's
a
not
really good
versatile.
dribbler. I'm not saying he's not versatile. I'm just like, but he's somewhere between a midfielder and a forward in that he's a really good dribbler. He's really strong on the ball. He can progress the ball really well. He's a great finisher. His passing's fine. He's confident. He's creative. But then the deeper you move him back in midfield, the more his skill set like struggles a little bit. And I think if you're talking about like top teams, title winning teams, whatever, in a midfield player, you want someone who can basically do everything.
Mm,
Like if you think about like a Gundogan,
yeah,
Gundogan can more or less play anywhere, centre midfield, any role. Like maybe not like a proper anchor defensive midfielder, but um, he's got like super diverse skill set. He does everything really well. I think Ramsey would go missing a little bit if he was playing like a kind of deeper number eight role. Um, couldn't play six very well. But he could play,
Well, I mean,
10 on the wing.
I think all that's valid, but I think maybe pigeonholing him into not or being able to or not being able to play certain positions uh, is more limiting to evaluating a player in general. I think because what you really got to look at is say think of a back four, right? And more specifically, think of the back two. You're looking at, do I have someone to win the ball in the air? Do I have someone to make those tackles? Step up. Do I have someone to cover and someone who can progress the ball, play the ball out? You might have all that in one player who's exceptional, and then just have a body next to it, essentially.
Yeah,
So for the manager, what you're really looking at isn't necessarily what exactly do I need here and want here. It's what do I have in general, what do I need in general for the squad, where can I fit it in, where it's functional. If you've got a guy who's really, really defensive, say in the midfield, but also contributes really, really well, maybe he's better defensively than Kamara, instead of pigeonholing and saying, all right, his best attributes is defensiveness, he should be at six. You could play him like they do Dougie at six, but then just give him the freedom to attack as well. Or
yeah,
say you need someone to progress the ball, you haven't really got, as in progressive carrier, but you haven't got anyone in your forwards who's great at that. Maybe they're more creative, more pace and power players who are going to finish chances and make runs in behind. You could easily then say, okay, Ramsey, play a little bit more reserve role alongside Kamara, but every time you get the ball, I want you running forward if you can. And so that kind of changes the perspective where even though you might not see him as a six, depends what you want your six to do, because he's definitely got the skill set overall to be versatile, as we've said, and he can definitely contribute defensively. So if you really wanted to, you could put him in a double pivot, but you just give him very specific instructions that suit his game.
yeah,
I think that's where people can get a little bit confused sometimes. Um, like moving players into different positions doesn't necessarily change their job, because
true, yeah,
football at the highest level, especially in modern days, becoming very fluid, where it's more about getting that overall functionality out of the team, and in a way, having it come from positions where people aren't used to it is actually an advantage. Like you see with John Stones playing this weird hybrid kind of centre back, right back, centre mid role, not even CDM, just like centre mid. So at points, if you're getting the players in positions where you need them during the period of that 90 minutes to get the results you need, to get all the different aspects you need, progress the ball, create chances, score chances, cover, step up and be aggressive, etc. If you're getting all the bits you need, doesn't matter necessarily where they come from. It's like some people will have a back three that just sits there, and then you have wing backs. Some people will have a back four with a wing back that comes in and drops one that pushes, maybe a midfield that comes across, covering the space and having all the different functionalities and sort of competencies that you need from a football team is more important than necessarily saying, Leon Bailey, you're a right winger. We like that you progress the ball a lot with progressive carries, and we've seen you do it from right wing. Therefore, you're only doing it there. You could feasibly put Leon Bailey in other positions of the squad, as long as his fundamental skills are at a high enough level that he doesn't create a weakness in the side being out of position.
yeah,
And that's, sorry, I've rambled on a lot there, but my point being, Ramsey could play in a double pivot, because defensively he's not so weak that he provides like a weakness there. It more creates a opportunity to find a new way of playing that allows Ramsey to do his job
yeah,
from another position.
yeah. But I mean, like the fact that you'd like have to justify his position, you'd have to change the team quite fundamentally to fit him in a double pivot, suggests that he's not like there's some players where you wouldn't have to. change the dynamic of a team
Yeah.
to put them in centre mid. I think he would only work in centre mid in certain circumstances, whereas top's actual centre midfielders could fit into a number of systems at centre mid, and that's why I think like he's not really a natural centre mid because it would have to be a specific kind of setup to accommodate him at centre mid. Whereas if you were to play him, I mean, it goes for every player, right? Like you need to accommodate every player because they've all got different traits. But I think he more naturally fits into a team at like left wing or at number 10 or like kind of a shadow striker, second striker kind of role. He'd fit into a lot of teams in those positions. He would only fit into a few systems at centre mid. So I think that's like if I don't know, it's kind of difficult. Like it's when you go on his FB ref, you can either compare him to like attacking mids and wingers or central midfielders,
Yeah.
and it looks completely different based on what you see. And it's like he's kind of got a bit of both. And so I think that's the only thing with his versatility is that he's one of those weird players who's quite unique in their skill set. Who, in the right system, in the right role, is I think pretty confident to say that he's a Champions League level player, or at least potentially in the right position. But he's not necessarily a Champions League player in like a number of positions, or you couldn't easily drop him into centre mid in any Champions League team. It would have to be a certain setup. So that's the only thing with
Well, I think
Ramsey is.
that's working under the assumption that a centre mid in any given team is that kind of attacking number 8 kind of role, where you have some defensive attributes, but your main job is creativity, passing, possibly ball carrying. So that's mostly the job of an 8, right? It kind of assumes that, and in any team, as you said, you do have to accommodate different players' strengths and weaknesses. Just like, for example, with Vinicius Junior at Real Madrid, they have to accommodate the fact that he's going to stay up high and purely be their main attacking outlet by having someone like Benzema who drops back a little bit deeper, is a little bit more reserved, more involved in build-up play. Yeah, he still scores goals and gets on the end of chances, but he has to change his game in order for that to work. But that's fine because Benzema can do that. So you're still creating what is a positive for the team while it being maybe a negative in the instance of you having to change what one player does and allowing another player to do what they do. So I don't think it's necessarily. I think we're just going back and forth here over nothing really. But
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily mean Ramsey can't just be dropped into a centre mid of any team in the Champions League, or wouldn't be able to in the future. It just means that like any player, you're going to have to accommodate what that player is good and bad at, and
Yeah.
what role they're going to play in that position.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I think it's just like that's what I'm getting at. It's like it's hard to evaluate Ramsey's skill set in terms of
Yeah,
like I think especially his passing, it's difficult to know how good a passer he is.
he just doesn't do a
Like
lot.
yeah, whatever however you're to accommodate him in a team, if you're playing him at central midfield or like he's mostly occupying a central midfield area, he needs to have a good range of passing. He needs to be consistent with his short and mid range passing, and
I'd
it's
say
basically
short is
impossible
very
to
good
know.
generally.
Yeah, it's short. Short seems to be fine,
Like
but
when
he
when
just
he's
passes like very little.
yeah when he's
Um,
moving up the pitch at speed, he tends to be able to string a move together and pass
yeah,
accurately,
yeah,
which
yeah.
isn't as easy as you might necessarily think. Which is why a lot
No,
of
no,
players
it's a
don't
good
charge
skill.
forward and and play the ball at the same time.
I think
Um,
that's probably his best asset is
yeah,
how fast he can run with the ball,
but then
like and how
yeah,
effectively he shoots it.
how controlled he is as well. But we saw in that pre-season game where he assisted Bertrand Traore. Um, that was a nice lofted ball over the defence in behind for Traore to smash. Well, I say smash. Lovely lofted goal that I still remember. Into the back of there quite easily. So he's obviously got the capability to do more, but as with a lot of this, you have to kind of caveat it with what is Unai asking him to do.
Yeah,
Because Unai probably knows, yeah, maybe he can do that, but that's not what he's best at. That's not what his best use is within the squad. So he's not going to tell him to do that. So we won't see that.
yeah,
Maybe in another future, bloody Luis Enrique comes in and asks him to be the next Xavi or something, and maybe he does it. Maybe he's great at it. But until
maybe.
someone
Yeah,
asks him to
that's the
do
thing.
that,
It's hard
yeah,
to know, isn't it?
yeah,
I guess because he's so young as well. Like we just haven't seen enough of him, I suppose, to really evaluate how effectively he can do different roles.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean that's kind of what makes him exciting as a player. I think is that like I've not seen you don't see many players who are as strong as him on the ball, who are as controlled as him on the ball, running at speed, who are he's quite unselfish. Decision making, his composure is really good when
yeah.
he's in
He's a very
like good
decisive player.
positions. Yeah, like he just picks the right pass all the time. If
Mm.
like and his finishing is amazing. Like
Yeah,
his finishing is so
it's kind of what I wanted to say when you first brought up his kind of list of strengths, because you included creativity in there, and I kind of thought, well, he's not a creative player. Like you don't see him standing players up, trying to beat them to get a cross in, or lifting his head up, threading through passes through like six players.
yeah. Like he doesn't
What you
pick the most
see,
impossible passes, does
yeah,
he?
what you see is decisiveness from him. So he
Yeah,
moves the ball forward, sees what appears in front of him, and picks the most sort of obvious best option, and makes sure
yeah,
that pass gets to the player's feet,
yeah,
which is kind of something that we take for granted because in the past you see someone like Leon Bailey get to
yeah.
good positions
I
and
mean,
make the
yeah. In a,
absolute
in a
wrong
team of
decision.
Leon Bailey and Emi Buendia, it's pretty refreshing, isn't it? Because
Yeah, because they're a bit
like,
more
yeah,
indecisive, a bit more flashy, a bit more creative, but
yeah,
when it
like
comes to
less.
it, they don't finish. Well, they not finish, but they don't provide those easy assists where there's the
Mhm.
player making a run. You can see him quite clearly. You just play the pass. They often hesitate, uh, and then that doesn't happen. So decisiveness can make up for a lack of creativity. Not that I think he can't be creative. It's just not his style.
Yeah.
Um,
No, absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I agree. Like massively underrated skill. I mean, I don't know how much you've played Football Manager, but honestly, people seem to overlook decision making and composure in Football Manager. And I've done it before, where you buy a player who's like dribbling amazing, technique amazing, vision amazing. If their decisions and their composure are shite, that player will be dreadful.
yeah,
Like it's really, I mean, you see it like Leon Bailey is the easiest example. He's obviously a good dribbler. He's obviously really fast. He's got good technique. Like his left foot is really nice. Uh, but he's just the most indecisive, least composed player you've ever seen, and it makes him really ineffective a lot of the time.
yeah,
So yeah, definitely a majorly good quality, especially considering Ramsey's really young, and these are the kind of qualities that tend to develop when you're a little bit older and you become more sort of like confident in your ability and your role in the team and stuff. Like to have a young player who's like super composed, like Ramsey is yeah, exciting player. Definitely, I think like I mean we were talking about players that will come with us on the progression. He's definitely going to be there. I think.
oh yeah, you'd hope so.
Um, yeah,
I mean,
he's good enough for top four. Definitely.
yeah.
If we made it to a fucking Real Madrid level of team, like I don't know,
I don't think it's ever
he'll
possible
be
to
on the
make it to
bench.
Real Madrid level of team because even Man City aren't a Real Madrid level of team.
True.
Maybe in
Yeah.
terms of like on the pitch they can match them, but they'll never
Yeah. Yeah.
match
Well, I mean,
Real
that's
Madrid.
what
Is
I mean.
you know,
Yeah. If we're a team challenging for titles, I think he'd still be on the bench. To be honest, I think he could play on Man City or Liverpool's bench probably.
yeah. I mean, would you say he's better than McAllister for Liverpool?
Uh, very different players. Um,
For what Liverpool need as a midfield, is he better or worse than McAllister? I would quite like to say better. Because the only thing I see that McAllister provides that he doesn't is this sort of attacking number eight playmaker kind of pivot. You know,
yeah.
he doesn't have a high defensive output, McAllister. Not that he wouldn't. You know, maybe he could in a different style, a different position. But that seems to be his main his main job that anyone would want him to do. That's why Liverpool have bought him, is to be a ball
Yeah,
playing central midfielder who's going to help out here and there with everything else. And I think overall, with what Ramsey gives you, you he
yeah.
gives you more. I think.
I would be inclined to say McAllister is more important, more useful to Liverpool now because I think Ramsey would thrive best in that team at a kind of like left wing or sort of very attacking kind of left midfield role, maybe. The only reason I'd say McAllister is better for Liverpool is because they've got players who can play on the left wing. I think Ramsey would like he'd give Luis Diaz and Nunez like a challenge for their position on the left wing because he offers something quite different, and he's
Mm,
got like better qualities than them in some ways. Just very different players, obviously.
yeah.
I think McAllister, they his qualities are more important to what Liverpool are like desperately lacking. Whereas Ramsey's qualities, they've got some of those in their attacking players, and Ramsey's more of a like more of a sort of an attacking midfielder slash winger kind of role, which they've Liverpool have got a bit more of. So I think I'd maybe say McAllister, but I think Liverpool would take him. Like absolutely,
Mm.
Liverpool would take him.
I think it's weird. I don't know what we're still talking about Ramsey. This
I
this should
know.
be just called the
What's
Ramsey
that
podcast. But
about?
like, I think he gets misprofiled sometimes. As like, obviously he can play wide, but I don't see him as a winger at all. He doesn't
No, he's
play
not a
like a
winger.
winger
He's
at
not a
all, really.
winger.
Like for the under twenty
Um,
ones, I think we see him in his best position as an attacking midfielder or an
but
attacking
then
number eight.
so often nowadays, like you look at Bernardo Silva. He's obviously not a winger. He's an attacking midfielder, but he plays on the wing.
And at left back.
Um, yeah. So it's like when I say winger, I don't mean he's a winger, but he plays quite often now attacking midfielders. Unless you're playing like a really traditional number 10 kind of role, if you're one of those players who's not really suited to playing a kind of number 8, like Bernardo Silva, wouldn't really fit in central midfield unless the system was designed to fit that in. Um, and if you're not playing that traditional number 10, then you probably are going to be playing like wide left, wide right, but you're going to be playing like inverted in the middle. So you are playing centrally in an attacking midfield kind of role, but you're playing, off the left, off the right. I think that's what Ramsey's probably his best position is playing off the left side of midfield, coming in centrally seems to be his best position, or just starting centrally. Like he'd obviously be as effective, maybe kind of number 10, second striker kind of role, but
Yeah, I think if you have an attack with enough threat in it, a player like Ramsey thrives in that sort of attacking mid number 8 role because he has way less attention on him, more space to run into.
yeah.
Pointless.
I mean,
I feel like his through ball, like his final ball, once you're in and around the box, is as good as and decisive as, if not more so, than Buendia's. Um,
yeah, yeah,
and so
I agree.
if you get him in those positions, whether it be by him dribbling there himself or providing him a late ball from somewhere around the edge of the box, I think he'll produce it, whether he's coming out from the left or coming from midfield. Either way, obviously it depends. The team you've got around him, he's been way more productive in a Unai Emery team than he's been in
Mm,
any other team. Dean Smith was the closest he got to
yeah,
where he is now, where he was sort of just breaking on the counter attack and had space to run into and had the freedom to go, what am
yeah.
I going to do with the ball here? Moving at pace at the opposition. Um,
I
so
think
yeah,
one of his best qualities as well is arriving late in the box.
mm,
His finish is good. His really first time as well. So I think if you had a system where you allowed the number 8 a lot of freedom in attacking sense to hover around the edge of the box when we're getting the ball forward, like he would bang in the goals, getting opportunities to shoot on the edge of the box. He would absolutely bang them in. Um, yeah, we've
Ramsey
been
for
talking about
false
Ramsey a
nine.
long time. Huh?
Ramsey false nine.
False nine,
Sorry, I had to do that for some reason.
top on his own.
That was no false nine. Next to Watkins. Like that's
Oh
so
yeah,
much
no,
better.
absolutely.
I
Yeah,
think he could do a job there. To be fair.
absolutely, man. I honestly, I mean, I don't want to talk about Football Manager again. It's not exactly a decisive source of football knowledge, but one of his best roles in Football Manager is a shadow striker, which is basically a striker that kind of shadows the centre forward. Gets ahead of the centre forward sometimes if the centre forward's holding up the ball. Kind of like Dele Alli. Dele Alli at Tottenham was a classic shadow striker, like somewhere between a striker and a midfielder, someone who's good on the ball, good finisher, good positioning. Um, Ramsey would do so well there.
Yeah.
Like someone who just hovers in the box, kind of like a poacher, but then he's got the skill set to like drop back into the midfield and do like link up play and progression and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd
So,
love to see him in the role.
should we do a little prediction, right, of who will progress in terms of their individual game the most this season? Bar players were already signing this season, obviously.
Okay. I think it's going to be. I'm going to give three suggestions. Right. Got the most. I don't know. Hear me out. The most obvious is Ramsey because of his age. Like he's clearly got the like the most space to step into. If you know what I mean. Because he's young and he's already at first team level, but he's young. Like he could improve. He could improve. Like his trajectory could be absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
Then my second shout is Buendia because he's kind of always showing glimpses of like an amazing player, but then is like inconsistent and annoying. Um, but I think, yeah, there's a chance that Buendia has like a real breakthrough season. Because I mean, the role he played against Newcastle in the friendly, where he was like in between the midfield and the forwards, like he found the space in between the defensive line and the midfield line really well.
Yeah.
And I think he can nail down the position. Like he could have a really brilliant season. And then the wild card is Leon Bailey.
Ooh.
uh,
All right. So if you get three, I get three. All right. And I'm gonna go different to yours. I might agree on one, but I'm gonna leave them out just for the sake of, you know, better content that no one watches. But anyway, uh, I'm gonna say Cameron Archer number one.
yeah, I did think about him.
I think we're gonna see him go from, oh, he looked good in the championship, to here's 50 mil.
Really, I
um,
think he'll be challenging
if
what.
he gets no, not that he'd challenge Watkins for a starting spot necessarily. Obviously, he'd be good enough to do it. I think he'd more likely get game time with him rather than challenge him. But I just think if he gets a small run of games, even in cups, and shows like an ounce of what he can do, I don't see a
Yeah,
way that he doesn't get more game time. And then the most valuable player on the pitch is the guy that scores the goals technically. So if he can do that, then theoretically you're seeing a huge progression there, just because of the level he's doing it at. Second, I would say Dougie Luiz, because even though it seems, I sort of said this to myself in my head while thinking this, it seems absurd to say a CDM who contributed over 10 goals and assists last season is going to improve even more than anyone else
yeah,
coming. But my logic behind it is, with a better defence behind him and a better attack in front of him and a more consistent midfield next to him, hopefully that being Kamara, not injured, he could just play his game with absolute freedom, and I think he would just blow up, because we know how good a player he is, and in the
yeah.
past we've
No, I
said
can
his
see that.
biggest limitations are tactics and having him being pulled back and made more defensive.
Yeah,
I
pretty
think,
much.
especially against the small teams where we're holding them back into their own box, we all know Dougie Luiz. He
Yeah,
can, he
man,
can
it's
arrive
pretty
late. He
special.
can hit them from range. He can swing him into the back post. Whatever you want, he can do it. And the more
Score
freedom
from the
and
corner.
everything he's got, I think the more we'll see that. And we might
Yeah,
end up hearing about him going for 100 mil next summer if we see that kind of progression.
yeah. I think he's the highest ceiling. To be fair,
Yeah, and then I'd
yeah.
say after that, player to
Give us a
make the
wild card.
most progression. Bit
As
of
a
a
free
wild
one.
card. Someone maybe you're not expecting. I think I've got one main player jumping out at me at the moment. Can't really think of anyone else. So, Konza.
Okay,
I think he's just going to become good. Like, really
fair,
good.
fair.
Because he always seems so composed on the ball.
Yeah.
I just think
No, I'd love to see that. I like Conte a lot.
whether it's at
He's a
that
good.
right back, centre back role, or whether it's just gaining a load of confidence, playing alongside even better defenders, and in a winning team, I just think he's going to be really good. I don't really have much more to say on it. It's a wild card for a reason. I just think he's going to be
Yeah,
really good.
well, it's a tricky one because like when it's a centre back, it's like there's a bit less to talk about maybe,
Yeah,
but I think Conte's a good shout because like that season when we were in lockdown and we ended up finishing like 11th or whatever, but we had a really good season. We had like the fourth or fifth best defense in the league that year.
he should have been player of the year, mate.
Konza, Mings, Martinez, like yeah, they were amazing. And there was he was I think he was like maybe 20, 22,
Oh no, I
23.
think he's 25 now, or
Yeah, but
26
that
now.
that season I think he was
So he would,
23.
yeah, he would have been maybe, uh, no, 24, wouldn't it be? Because you had
Yeah,
last season, and then it was
well
the
he's
season
25
before that
now.
that we finished 11th, right?
Um, so the season
Oh no,
before
that was the
last,
14th. That was the 14th position. So it was 3 years ago that we got the 11th.
I think he would have been 23.
Yeah,
Um,
20, 23, 24. Anyway, we were,
but yeah,
yeah,
the, one of the like fourth, fifth best defense in the league that year. Konza was the heart of it, and Konza was kind of Mings was in the England team, but Konza was like almost more impressive because nobody knew who he was.
yeah. I thought he
And
was
like
a
you had
better
big
player
stats where,
that
yeah,
season as
no, I
well.
think it was like he had less mistakes in him, and he seemed to just never get beaten, always in the right position. And then he had an injury, didn't he? And then he dropped off a little bit.
Yeah,
But I would love to see Konza like really. I'd love to see him like cement his role in the team this year because I feel like he's always forgotten about in the conversation, isn't he? Like he's always like the
he's always
dispensable centre
mentioned as
back.
the afterthought of Mings. If you got Mings, you got
Yeah,
Konza. He's never thought of as
yeah,
like Konza the man. It's always Mings the man, Konza the helper. It's never like
yeah,
Esri. Look at this dude.
yeah.
You know.
But no, I think what I would like is for him to get that right centre back roll down because I do think like Torres is going to play, right? He's the love of Emery's life. Torres is going to play. Konzo is maybe a little bit physically fragile to play in a back two with Torres, so I would love Konza to move into like right centre back, kind of like inverted right back kind of role,
Yeah.
and make that his position. That would be so cool if he could really nail that down.
Yeah. No, he'd be good at
Yeah,
it. I
no,
think. To be fair.
Konza's a cool shout. Konza's a cool shout.
Mm.
Yeah, I've got to go on that bombshell.
Oh, what a bombshell! Oh, here's a bombshell. Just to put some claims, some real cement to your theory. Yes or no? Have Unai and Pau ever kissed?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay then. Anything more than that, or just a little cheeky
No,
kiss? Just
no,
once.
like it was more than a cheeky kiss, but it wasn't anything more. It was
Oh,
like
it meant more.
it meant more. I think, yeah, they've
I
kissed.
think they've never said a word about it.
Nah, man, I reckon it was middle of the dressing room. It was, it was
After they won the
they
quarter final.
beat, yeah, they beat who did they beat in the quarterfinal?
I
Liverpool,
think with Bayern.
Bayern Munich. Yeah, they beat Bayern Munich in the quarterfinal. Celebrations in the dressing room. Unai and Torres having a dance, and then they just they have a big snog, and that's it, and everybody cheers.
Fair
And
enough.
yeah,
Fair enough.